I'm David Skidmore. Today we're going to be continuing to talk about double lateral strokes, specifically the sticking 2-1-3-4. We'll also be introducing arpeggiated chords. We'll be talking about body position and the best playing area on the marimba bars. And we'll cover a few helpful hints for learning some of the trickier passages of the etude that's a part of this lesson. Take a look at how the music is notated throughout this lesson. The right hand is always notated in the upper staff, and the left hand is always notated in the lower staff. As we've seen in past lessons, the sticking is indicated by numbers that are underneath the notes. So 2, 1, 3, 4, that indicates the sticking. But you'll notice that the sticking says 2, 1, 3, 4, etc., and then there's no other sticking indicated throughout the etude. And this is just because you can infer from the music and the way that it's laid out that the sticking will be the same throughout the entire etude. So let's warm up with the first exercise in this chapter. And this is essentially just repeating the first musical material of the piece over and over again to get our hands used to the sticking and warmed up. So let's start nice and slow. Be sure to use the piston stroke that we've been talking about since the very first lesson, and keep your hands nice and relaxed. Remember, these are double lateral strokes, so it should be essentially one wrist motion, a wrist bend and a wrist turn for every 2 notes. Really, the only other sticking that we use in this entire etude is the very last note of the piece, which is an arpeggiated chord. An arpeggiated chord is essentially a broken chord. So instead of playing all of the notes of the chord at the same time, you play each note of the chord in rapid succession. So think of the way that like a guitar player would strum a chord on guitar, and that's sort of the sound that we're going for. Warm-up number 2 gives us a chance to practice these arpeggiated chords, starting nice and slow. So let's get our metronome going. At quarter equals 60. Remember, once again, that you can modify these exercises, and in fact, I recommend that you do so with this exercise. So why don't we start by just repeating the first measure of warm-up exercise number 2 4 times. Now let's repeat the second part of this exercise, the 16th notes, 4 times. And now let's repeat the last part of this exercise, the arpeggiated chord as notated, 4 times. Although the notes of the arpeggiated chord should be played in rapid succession, notice how it still sounds really relaxed. This is not a race. So it doesn't actually matter if you're playing the notes absolutely as fast as you possibly can. You just want to make sure you're getting that effect. Have that sound in your ear of a guitar strumming a chord and mimic that sound as you're playing, keeping it nice and relaxed. The next warm-up exercise is 3A, 3B, and 3C. Will help you learn what is probably the trickiest part of this lesson, which is the last 3 measures of the etude. We start out by playing the notes from these last 3 measures of the etude as block chords. Remember to start nice and slow and focus on the shifts between chords. At this point, we should really talk about body position and playing area on the bar. Because for so much of this lesson we play on both the upper manual, the flat notes, and the lower manual, or the natural notes, we have to spend a lot of time focusing not only on how to position our body to just get to those notes in the first place, but also how to make sure that we're playing on the best area of the bar so we're getting the best sound possible. Let's look at just the last 2 measures of this exercise as an example. So we start out with my right elbow kicked out pretty far to the right to get to this F and A flat. And then that right elbow comes back in towards the body to a pretty neutral position. And then on the next chord, it has to come in to get to this E flat and G. So you notice my whole body shifts a little bit to the left. And then I have to shift my body and my elbows to the right for this chord, and then back to center. So now let's look at all of that with the metronome. So as you can see, even at the slowest metronome marking, there's some pretty quick body shifting that's happening. So you can take it way slower. You can turn that metronome off and just start with finding the best body position, shifting to the next chord, and feeling what that feels like. Maybe you go back and forth between those first two chords a few times just to really get that body motion ingrained and comfortable. Now let's continue warm-up number 3. So we're going to take those exact same pitches, but now we're going to separate the block chords into eighth notes, left hand and then right hand. Spend plenty of time with this version of the exercise because it's really close actually to what the final product is going to be, with one main difference. Instead of focusing on double lateral strokes, you can just focus on the notes themselves. You can focus on the body position and the good playing area on the bar. And then once all of that is really, really comfortable, then you can add in the double lateral strokes, which are the newer technique. And finally, once you've worked up the tempo on exercise 3B, that second part of the exercise, then you can move on to 3C, and that is the passage exactly as it appears in the etude. And of course, the cool thing is, once you've mastered this exercise, you've already mastered the 3 trickiest measures of the etude and really the most difficult part of this entire lesson. Okay, now let's talk phrasing. Even though there's quite a few dynamics indicated throughout the etude that's a part of this lesson, if you see a few measures go by without a printed change in dynamics, you can still add little crescendos and diminuendos that'll really help to delineate the musical phrases. Check out the phrasing exercise from your book. Let's start really slowly. I want you to notice a couple of things about this exercise and the phrasing that I'm suggesting. The key signature for this etude, for this entire lesson, is E flat major. And those first 3 beats of the first full measure of this exercise, we're just arpeggiating an E flat major triad. That E flat major, of course, is the tonic, or the key center for the entire piece. The first 2 notes of the pickup measure are B flat and D, and that leads us to really hear that as a dominant, or the 5 chord in the key of E flat major. And that means that we have this sense that that pickup measure is really leading into the downbeat of the next measure. That's why that little crescendo that I write in the pickup measure sounds satisfying moving into the downbeat of the next measure. It's like we're going from the 5 chord to the 1 chord. And if all this music theory talk feels really unfamiliar to you, just try listening to the music a few times and see if you can hear it the same way I do, with that pickup note really leading into the downbeat of the next measure. Of course, as you continue to play the etude, there are lots of moments for little crescendos or diminuendos or changes of dynamic to help shape the musical phrases. Be sure also to check out the complete performance of my etude from this lesson. Thanks for watching.